Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Welcome back, everybody. So just to introduce myself, my name is Chris Llorente. I wear a couple different hats here at the Alameda County Behavioral Health, but one of them is as the IPS trainer, and I provide training and technical support around IPS to contract agencies as well as county operated programs. So in our county operated program, we have a vocational unit that's dedicated, strictly to IPS, and we are embedded in over 15 other service teams. And in addition to the county operated program, we have community-based organizations, 10 of them, that have implemented IPS, and I provide the training, technical support, and Fidelity Reviews to those agencies. For me, it's been a little bit of a circuitous journey. After slogging my way through 12 years of financial services, liability, risk management, I made the switch from the for-profit world to the social profit world. I actually started off my career in human services as an employment specialist myself. Found myself after that supervising a supported employment program at one of our CBO agencies here in Alameda County. And in 2016, I made the transition from CBO to county as an IPS trainer. And I'll let Dawn, my co-presenter, introduce herself.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Dawn Hanson. I am currently working in the role of Senior Rehab Counselor with Alameda County's Vocational Program. In my role, I support the supervision of employment specialists, rehab counselors, and also promote IPS services to the 18 county operated and community-based organizations that we currently serve. While I've been with the county for over 9 years, I have been in the world of rehab for over 20. I can't believe I'm that old, but I am. And, in various places around the country, including Montana and Virginia. I have a rehab and mental health counseling degree from Montana State University, excuse me, and hold a licensed professional clinical counseling credential. And I must say, I can't imagine doing anything else. I really enjoy the work that I do and what the vocational program stands for. Guiding people down a recovery journey using education and employment is very rewarding. And for example, and this kind of happens a lot, but just happened the other day again, as I'm out and about in the community and someone comes up to me, when I'm just doing my thing, and with a big smile on their face, a gentleman, a previous vocational program, client, and just so happy, so confident, and just wanted to share that he's doing well and just got a promotion on the job, and the new goals that he's setting for himself is just really exciting. And I'm always full of gratitude that I'm able to be a part of things of that nature, helping people, down the path to become their best selves. So I am happy that we have 157 folks in this presentation. So we're going to get started. Take it away, Chris.
Cool. All right. So before jumping, head on into this, I just want to take a very quick moment, for us to reflect and sit with what's been happening in our communities over these in the country and globally over the past 2 years. But the good news is that things are on an upswing. So it's time for us to get grounded, reoriented, and refocused on the work that we do. And if you guys were able to hear Joe Xavier's keynote speech, it really is an opportunity for us to look at the landscape, as it is, consider, all right, are we ready to take things on and do things a little bit differently, take on, new ideas, new approaches, and, consider this, an opportunity, for a paradigm shift. I know there's a ton of folks on the call right now, and, for some of y'all, this IPS stuff is very new to you. And so we hope to, share all about that. Okay, so before we get into this training, let's just for a moment, put ourselves in the shoes of one of our mental health program participants. So imagine this, imagine you are an adult living with a severe and persistent mental illness, and you're connected to a county specialty mental health team. You've been unemployed for long term. You've considered going back to work in the past, but you've been told you're too sick to work by your friends, by your family, maybe even your workers. And none of your workers have ever mentioned, going back to work or employment. You're barely getting by on SSI, or maybe, a combination of SSI and SSDI. You find yourself bouncing between family and board and cares, and you rely on other people. You rely on your family for things. You rely on your caseworker for your needs. And your days at the board and care are spent on what I call the 3 C's: cigarettes, Coca-Cola, and the couch. In other words, you don't have much, if any, meaningful activity throughout your day. Suddenly, there's a knock at your door. It's your worker dropping by, often, as they do, but they're with an unfamiliar person. And this person introduces themselves and says, "I'm the new employment specialist with the vocational program." And they go on to explain their role and how they help people with employment. And then they ask you, "Are you interested in getting a job?" Thoughts race through your mind. It's been so long since I've worked. What about my benefits? What will my family say? But by all accounts, you can tell that this person is really here to help, and you trust your caseworker. So you push aside the hesitation and uncertainty, and you tell that person, "Yes, I am interested." Okay, so quickly, we've heard a lot of talk about social determinants of health, so think to yourself, why do you work? What gets you up every day out of bed, and getting back to work? So according to the World Health Organization, according to the CDC and other leading health agencies, the conditions in the places where people live, where they learn, where they work, and grow affect a wide range of health risks and outcomes. And these conditions are known as the social determinants of health. Health and wellness is rooted in the home, in our schools, in our workplaces, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. We know inherently that eating healthy and being active, not smoking, and seeing the doctor regularly, all these influence our health for the better. We also know that disparity in the quality of our education, in the nature of our neighborhood, our social interactions, our relationships, experiences, our community resources, even the cleanliness of our food, of our air, and our water, these can explain why people are healthier, while some people are healthier than others. So our respective focus and influence on these social determinants of health are employment and education, which all support economic stability, all of which impact our physical and mental health and our overall well-being. So again, think for a moment. Why do you work? What gets you out of bed every day? Philosophically, is it to make a difference in the world? Socially, is it to connect with people and have that human interaction? Practically, is it to earn money so we can put roofs over our head and food on the table? So if you go on a Google Scholar right now and you type in, what are the effects of steady employment, both, positive and negative, you're going to get over 700,000 results. The benefits of steady employment are increased income, improved self-esteem, improved social networks, increased quality of life, better control of symptoms, reduced hospitalization, reduced substance use, and reduced use of mental health services. And we also know that there are definitely negative effects of unemployment. Those being reduced self-esteem, loss of social contacts, alienation and apathy, increased substance use, increased physical problems, increased psychiatric disorders. People who are unemployed, they report feelings of depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, demoralization, worry, even physical pain. unemployed individuals tend to suffer more from stress-related illnesses such as high blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, heart disease, and arthritis. And in addition, experiences such as perceived job insecurity, downsizing, or even workplace closure and underemployment, all these have implications for physical and mental health. So why IPS supported employment? Why do our shared consumers of mental health services need supported employment? Well, in California, unfortunately, only about 10% of people in the public mental health system work, nearly the lowest employment rate out of all 50 states. What we do know is that IPS helps 40% and even more of people get jobs and are twice as likely to get a job with IPS versus traditional rehab programs, as demonstrated through over 25 different randomized control trials over the last 20 years. We know that people work longer stints in IPS, they earn more money, and are more likely to become steady workers than people in traditional rehab programs. IPS was developed and works best for people with severe and persistent mental illness. And IPS is shown to be effective, as Gary said in the last presentation, for other disability and marginalized groups, including homeless, SUD, veterans with TBI, CalWORKs and TANF, IDD, autism, and more. So this approach to supported employment has been around since the late 80s. Originally developed and validated for people with SMI. In early 2000s, it was listed as an evidence-based practice by SAMHSA. And like I said earlier, there's 25 randomized control trials, and that number is growing to this day, showing that this approach to supported employment, IPS, is almost is literally twice as effective as those receiving traditional services. And as Gary also stated in his presentation, follow-up studies 10 to 12 years down the line have shown stable results for people who have participated in IPS. Here are some current statistics here showing the longitudinal efficacy of IPS. This data is taken from the IPS International Learning Community. So every 3 months, organizations who are part of this community roll up their outcomes, to the IPS Employment Center, and they capture all those outcomes and put together these numbers here. So in the first quarter of 2022, there was over 350 agencies that reported their outcomes. We collectively, and Alameda County is a part of this this collaborative. Collectively, we serve close to 20,000 people, and almost 9,000 of them work, for an overall competitive employment rate of nearly 46%. All right, so here's Abraham Maslow and his theory of needs, right? This is an iconic pyramid, one of the most famous images in the history of management and behavioral studies. At the base of this pyramid are physiological needs, and at the very top is self-actualization, the full realization of one's unique potential. And along the way, their needs for safety and housing, belonging, and esteem. But what's notable about this is that there's really no evidence that Maslow ever actually represented his theory as a pyramid. On the contrary, it's argued he did not view his categories like the needs of a video game, unlocking levels one at a time in a sequential order. Instead, he stated, we are always going back and forth within these categories of needs, and we can target multiple categories at the same time. It's described as Maslow's pyramid and perpetuates unfair criticisms of the theory. For example, that people are only motivated to satisfy one need at a time, or that one need must be 100% satisfied before the next category of need kicks in. So visually, let's now look at Maslow's needs presented in a circle. No beginning, no end, no hierarchy. This representation better supports his belief that people can have numerous partially satisfied needs and partially unsatisfied needs at the same time. So in other words, the order in which needs emerge is not fixed. So then this leads us to the age-old paradox, which came first, the chicken or the egg? So for us, is it housing first or is it employment first? So instead of grappling with that paradox, I suggest we look at all our shared participants' barriers in employment through a different lens. A lens of symbiosis. The term symbiosis is generally used to describe mutualistic relationships. We've all seen National Geographic, or maybe some of you even remember Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. It's, when a little bird can sit in an alligator's mouth and not get eaten. It's the relationship in this picture here on the right between the clownfish that live among the sea tentacles of the sea anemones. The territorial clownfish protects the anemone from anemone-eating fish, and in turn, the stinging tentacles of the anemone protect the clownfish from its predators. So between existing clinical services and supported employment, we have the same opportunity to achieve that symbiosis. We can help our shared program participants achieve their dreams for a better future, which includes stable permanent housing, sobriety, mastery of ADLs, and also stable gainful employment. We're able to do all this by adhering to the 8 basic supported employment practice principles, which are, focus on competitive employment, systematic job development, rapid job search, integration of employment and mental health treatment team services, benefits planning, zero exclusion, time unlimited supports, and also adhering to worker preferences. So we are going to do a little bit of a dive into these 8 practice principles. And Dawn, I'll turn it over to you for the very first one.
Thank you, Chris. So here at the vocational program, we kind of think of these 8 practice principles. We think of IPS kind of as the larger recipe, and these practice principles are kind of like the ingredients, right? The better ingredients you use and you execute those, the better that cake's going to be. Well, the better you execute these practice principles, the better the employment outcomes will be for your program, for your consumers. So the very first one, practice principle, is zero exclusion. And so zero exclusion is all about anybody who wants to work can work. It's based on consumer choice, and no one is excluded because of a diagnosis, a recent hospitalization, a criminal justice history, or any work readiness criteria. Oftentimes with this zero exclusion, we get some head scratches, right? But what if? I've experienced so much job loss in the past, so we kind of are always flipping things. And so you've been shown then to get jobs. So please work with us on the maintenance of that job and for the retention. We have all kinds of wonderful employment specialists and rehab counselors that are trained in the retention of jobs. So we would focus on that with that particular individual. Some folks are very scared of losing a job and what would happen. Well, we've all lost jobs in the past. So what we would do in terms of that is we would look at that particular job and kind of break down what worked and what didn't work, and make some adjustments to, the preferences. Maybe the person needs to start a little bit later in the day, or maybe they need to work closer to work because it was too hard to get to. So we just kind of break down what worked and didn't work, and jump right back in and look for the next job. Another big one that folks tend to indicate is, wow, well, I'm actively experiencing some sort of mental health symptom, and are worried about how that will affect their job, or maybe a case manager is worried about, their client and how would they function in the workplace. Well, it's really just meeting people where they're at. We find that, folks that are working and are introduced to a schedule and a routine, find that they are not only distracted from whatever's happening that's negative, but they're able to throw themselves into something productive throughout the day. And oftentimes this re-engages the participant in wellness with their health practitioner. Maybe they have a reason now to re-engage in using the medication or therapy or whatever it may be. They have a purpose now and a reason to kind of re-engage around their mental health treatment plan. Another thing we often hear is, well, maybe a client is using substances quite a bit. And so again, we're meeting the person where they are, and also using work as a diversion. So hopefully, and this happens quite a bit, is the person doesn't have time to use, they are filling their days with positive activities and slowly reducing the use. And so we find that work works very well with people using substances. We do have some, oftentimes when I meet with folks, they say, well, I haven't had a job in a long time. It's going to be hard for me to remember tasks and how will I keep everything straight? And again, we have wonderful employment specialists that provide job coaching on the job, or certainly job aids. I know for myself, I have a to-do list every day. I really have creative ways to make sure that folks are well supported, and so they feel confident about what they're doing. And sometimes it's, I'm on the job with you, and then you do the task until the person feels comfortable, or maybe as simple as a job aid or a checklist. Criminal history is another big one. Sometimes people feel that they've had such a past that maybe get back into the workforce, they're not going to be a lot of opportunities. Again, meeting people where they are, what can we do right now with that short-term goal and getting you back into the workforce as it fits your preferences. But also while we're doing that, we're breaking down those long-term goals. So we work with outside community-based resources like Clean Slate in order to wipe out criminal backgrounds, and so that folks aren't held accountable for maybe a couple indiscretions they had when they weren't doing or feeling their best. So we're always trying to break down those goals and make them manageable so people can continue to move forward in their life and not have those big barriers in the way. So, our counselors really take and employment specialists really help the clients look at strengths and transferable work skills and meet people where they're at. And we encourage everyone to come chat with an employment specialist or rehab counselor in the IPS program if they're on the fence, because oftentimes these what ifs are part of what we do. It's part of our service and supports that we offer. Everybody's a little bit different, but we provide the wraparound support to accommodate these what ifs, and so to put everybody's kind of plan into action and meet everybody where they're at. So that is zero exclusion. So we're going to move on next to a focus on competitive employment.
All right, so competitive employment is the ultimate goal for IPS. And what is competitive employment? These are quote unquote like regular mainstream jobs in the community that are open to anyone. So anybody can apply for these. What competitive employment is not is jobs set aside specifically for people who have disabilities and marginalized groups, and groups who get paid, less than minimum wage. So these jobs open anybody in the community, pay at least minimum wage. And importantly, so even for our folks, when we place folks into competitive jobs, we're ensuring that the mental health consumers are getting paid at least what their peers are getting paid, or commensurate with, what the industry pays for that typical type of work. For instance, right, if we get somebody a job, at a construction site, we want to make sure that that person is getting, 25, 30 bucks an hour, just like everybody else, not the minimum wage, because, they're a person who has a disability. IPS endorses competitive jobs for, a number of reasons. Number one, consumers themselves report, preferring competitive employment over, sheltered work. By integrating mental health consumers into the community, they act as emissaries, for mental health. They help, people help, reduce stigma and discrimination by enabling people to work side by side with people who don't have, disabilities. Again, these our consumers really are, ambassadors, for mental health. Ultimately, they promote community integration. Competitive jobs, promotes community integration, self-sufficiency, financial stability, and also career development over time. And ultimately, it promotes, positive self-worth.
All right, we're moving on to rapid job search. IPS specialists help people start looking for jobs within 1 month of starting the program. So as soon as people express an interest in employment, service team members connect them with employment specialists, and within 30 days of employment, employment specialists are helping participants explore the job market, fill out applications, and the employment specialist has already met with several employers face-to-face based on that individual's preference for work. This next item is something that really resonates with me. We don't have any pre-employment assessments, or training and counseling are not required to participate in our program. There are no workshops or trial work experience. We hit the ground running, and we really don't encourage hoops for clients to jump through. They're indicating that they want to work, and we value that, and we run with it, right? We want to capitalize on their motivation to work in the moment. And certainly we're getting to know the client and their preferences. We're filling out that career profile and getting to know them very closely, but as we're moving in the direction of that active job search, that actively getting the job, we're not talking about it or wondering if a client is yet ready to do this. They're telling us they're ready. So we're valuing that opinion, and we're running with it. And also IPS specialists help people explore the world of work at a pace that's right for the individual. So I always tell, clients, oftentimes they come and sometimes they're worried, well, how fast am I going to get this job? Or, hey, I really got to get a job really fast. I've got to be able to pay my rent this month. So I always tell, the client that they are in the driver's seat and all of us support staff are in the back seat. And you just tell us how fast you want to go. And if they say, well, I want to get a job next week, then buckle up, because we're going to make it happen, right? We're going to fully support the pace that you want to go. And certainly there are some people that have some unique interests and want to take things a little slower so they can explore that particular path. So then we, go at that pace as well. So it's very individualized, the pace, but we move pretty quickly to capitalize on a client's motivation. And oftentimes it happens, 30 days, oftentimes we've got a lot going on within the first week that the employment specialist is meeting with that client. So we can move pretty quickly, so.
Thank you, Danya. And I just want to reiterate that, like Don was saying, people are at different stages of change, when they walk through the door, when they engage with IPS services. It would be great if every single person on the caseload was in that action-oriented mode and they wanted to get out there, but that's just not the case. There's going to be people who are contemplative, it's just kind of thinking about it. They've got some hesitancy around it. People who are action-oriented, who like Don said, that first week, we meet them, They know exactly what they want to do. They want to work at that Home Depot on Main Street, and it's pretty clear. So the job developer can run with that, and go down there and start engaging with employers, as opposed to somebody who still has some questions and has some concerns. But the overall goal and metric we're striving for is that no matter where people are at, sort of in their stage of change, we are going to go out and we're going to engage with employers on that person's behalf. So even that person who is contemplative, who may have regressed to pre-contemplation, we're still going to go out and we're going to engage an employer within the first 30 days. So it's not that we've gotten somebody an interview within the first 30 days. It's not that we've gotten somebody a job within the first 30 days. It's simply the employment specialist has gone out and learned a little bit about a job or a specific industry that our person is interested in. And oftentimes, just the act of doing that can help somebody move, through those stages of change, right? If they were contemplative and not quite sure, whether or not they wanted to go to work or, wanted to go into a certain industry, the employment specialist going to, the employer, learning about that specific job, learning about the specific requirements and the role, and bringing that information back, to the participant may help, maybe clear up some uncertainty with them. Say, oh, okay, now that I have a better understanding of what this job's about, I'm ready to move from that contemplation phase, to action oriented. And it's also, the job development piece is also a great way to, to engage and keep in contact with our participants over time. All right, so the next practice principle is targeted job development. So getting to know, employers helps people find jobs that meet their strengths, their needs, their abilities, and their preferences. So one of the main goals of the employment specialist is to build relationships with employers through planned in-person contacts over time. So that is the employment specialist, not just, visiting an employer one time, but it's coming back over time and really developing, that relationship, face to face. I know, over the past 2 years, a lot of this activity has been occurring, over the phone or virtually, but, when things open up now, we really want to see employment specialists out in the community doing that face-to-face job development contact. So it's very, very intentional, so each employment specialist is looking at their caseload, and they're looking at the individual and what their preferences are, and they're going out to employers or industries based on an individual's specific preference. So it's not like I'm just going out and I'm hitting, any and all, employer that's hiring and learning about that. And again, it's very intentional. It's like, I'm going to go to that Home Depot because, or that Lowe's or that Ace Hardware because, this is what this person wants. This is the industry that they want. They want, retail work, in construction or tools or whatever it may be. So, and part of, going and seeing and meeting with these employers face to face, as opposed to over the phone or virtual, is that the employment specialist is able to be on site and really take in, the environment and see what's going on, and knowing, their participant, being able to make, some observations, saying, okay, is this a good, would this be like a good environment, for the person who I'm supporting, knowing, what their strengths and abilities are, but also taking into consideration, what some of the barriers and challenges might be. So, they're going out, they're engaging with the employer, they're learning about the specific roles, they're asking about, maybe roles or jobs that aren't, immediately, visible or obvious, right? Oftentimes, you see the people that are in a retail setting, there's employees that are working the floor, but, what about the back room? What about, the administrative piece? What about, the shipping and the logistics, right? So these are all opportunities for employment specialists to engage with employers and learn about, all of the different roles and jobs there. Just an opportunity to learn about, the hiring process, exactly the qualities and attributes that an employer is looking for, and an opportunity to, talk about, workplace adjustments, accommodations, and potential, flex hours, all things of that nature, just, lots of information that, the employment specialist can take into account and then bring back, to the job seeker and say, hey, here's everything that I found, and ultimately letting the job seeker themselves decide, what the next steps are going to be. Like, hey, okay, so is this something that I want to pursue? This sounds fantastic. It's really right up my alley. It's everything that I thought it would be. Or it could be, whoa, this is, thanks for going out there and asking those questions. I'm learning, that there's aspects of this job that I didn't even consider, or, there's responsibilities that I didn't, think were part of the job. And this, ultimately doesn't sound like something that I'd want to pursue. And then, you just go on to plan B after that. So that is targeted job development.
All right. The next practice principle is hones in on individual preferences, and that is what guides decisions. The job search is based on individual preferences, strengths, and work experiences, not a pool of jobs that are readily available. Job seekers indicate preferences for everything, but for job type, work hours, and types of job supports are just a few. So service providers really keep their attention focused on the employment goals of the folks that they serve, and generally don't impose their ideas or plans. Service providers utilize approaches to help individuals identify their personal strengths, skills, and job interests. And as we all know, people that find jobs that they want tend to experience higher levels of satisfaction and tend to keep their jobs for longer, right? If you have a job that just really isn't a good fit, you're not going to retain it. And we've all had those jobs that we've quit because they're just not working, right? The time of day, the type of duty, the location, whatever it may be. So we really want to set everyone up for success, and setting folks up for success is honing in on preferences. And so we get really into the nitty gritty of everything as it pertains to the job to make sure that all the boxes are checked, right? It might be the specific industry or a certain employer. Maybe it's a location. Maybe the client feels really good about working in a certain neighborhood or close to home, walkable. I know if with take clients, it's important for them to be able to get there on their own, and they might not have a car and can't rely on family, things of that nature. Hours of the day. Some people work best at different hours, a start time and an end time. I know I've had people that wanted to get home because they rode public transportation safely, and they didn't want to be traveling at night. So whatever works best to check those boxes. Disclosure is a big one. How much does a person want to disclose? Certainly, we're constantly weighing the pros and cons of disclosure from the first time we meet the client up until, they've got the job that they want, because it's really important, based on what the client's needs are. You may want to disclose a little bit about where you're at, your challenges and needs, so that we can help you advocate for some accommodations on the job. And some folks don't feel comfortable doing that at all. And so then we're kind of more behind the scenes, but it's always an individual preference. And sometimes it's an individual preference based on each situation, and that changes. So we're constantly checking in about disclosure. And also ongoing support from service providers. What kind of supports do they want? How often? How much is needed? You know, do they want full job coaching where we're on the job with the client, showing them how to do the duties and slowly fading out? Are we completely offsite, you know, and meeting with coffee before, you know, the job, the shift starts and at the end of the shift, you know, and the employer has no knowledge of us? Or is it somewhere in between, a hybrid where, you know, we help the client get into the job and then we provide as needed supports to make sure they feel comfortable, that they have natural supports developed, and that they're comfortable advocating for themselves and confident, you know, with their coworkers and employers. So, and confident with their job duties. So everything is based on consumer preference. And so we follow this principle very closely.
Yeah, and I just want to add that, you know, it can oftentimes be very much an iterative process. You know, the folks that that we're supporting may not have worked in years, or they may not have worked at all. So they really just don't have that, typical vocational development like a lot of us have had, right? I don't think many of us can say that, you know, we're in the same job today that, you know, as our very first job ever, right? We've kind of gone through that progression and tried things on and seen what we like, what we don't like. You know, it's almost important to, you know, it is as important to know what we don't want to do as it is the knowing what we do want to do, if that makes any sense. But you know, we'll often meet folks and, you know, again, they haven't worked in a while or ever worked, and you know, you say, well, what is it that you're interested? What do you want to do? And people will say, I'll do anything, I'll work anywhere, you know, it doesn't matter to me. So, you know, we'll go with that, and we'll find a job, you know, for somebody, you know, clear across town, doing something maybe that's, you know, with heavy, you know, public, you know, interface and dealing with customers, and it's, you know, late night, and the person, you know, quickly finds out like, hey, I don't like commuting so far. I really don't like people, and nights aren't good for me, you know. So, you know, that job may, you know, quickly end. But, you know, our approach is that this is always a glass half full experience, right? We're going to take the experience and what we learned, you know, from that job, even if it didn't work out, and build upon that and focus on the awesome. You know, it's like, hey, this person hasn't had a job in decades, but they, you know, they nailed that interview, they got the job, and you know what, it didn't work out, but now we know what our next steps are. So we're not, you know, if somebody falls out of a job or decides to, you know, that they want to quit, we're not pushing them to the end of the line. We're taking that information that we gleaned through that experience, and we're using that as a stepping stone and a building block for the next job. All right, so the next practice principle here is that individualized, you know, long-term supports are in place, meaning that we're going to be providing job supports for folks as long as they want or they need them. You know, of course, the caveat being that they're still, you know, eligible for, you know, the overall mental health services, but we don't have sort of artificial or arbitrary, you know, time periods in place. Like, okay, you know, after 90 days, you know, we're going to transition you off services. You know, during the first 90 days, supports are super important. But if you think about, you know, somebody being new on the job, during the first 90 days, you know, people are getting extra training on the job. They may be linked up with a coworker who's like a buddy, you know, and they're sort of like on their probationary period, right? And after that 90 days, you know, boom, they're on their own. And we definitely don't want to, you know, sort of like leave folks hanging there. We want to make sure that we are providing the support based on their preferences, like Don was saying. You know, we're gonna base the intensity of our supports around what they need. You know, some folks are gonna be like, hey, I need you available, you know, during my break, you know, tomorrow. I've been having some tough time. I'm gonna call you. So, we're available. Or can you come down to the job site and meet with me at lunch? I've got some challenges with the job, or maybe with a coworker that I need to talk about. And some folks may even say, hey, I need you to come on site and help advocate, for me, with my manager. Because I know, you're the employment specialist, you're the one who engaged with this employer, and you've got that relationship. I just need, help. My voice just needs some help here, and that's the level of support that I need. So we're gonna provide that. There's other things, right? So helping just plan routines, right? Making sure that people get up on time, that they've got appropriate clothing. We're doing travel training with folks. Like I said, we're providing those on-the-job supports, whether it be job coaching or advocating for any accommodations. And then we're also helping folks, throughout their vocational development with job transitions. People are successful after a time. Like a lot of us, they say, hey, I've nailed this. I'm really confident, in my job. I can do it. I'm ready for the next step. I'm ready for a promotion, or I'm ready to leverage this experience and transition, to a different industry, but take the knowledge, the skills, the abilities I've learned from this job and transfer them to the next role. So we're here, and this may even be an opportunity for folks to say, hey, I really enjoy this industry. I really enjoy this job. I want to go back to school now because I really want to up my game and make myself more competitive, for those higher level jobs, those higher paying positions that are in this specific industry. So these are all things that we're helping support our folks with. With the ultimate goal, right, of folks being as independent as possible. Just from our program in general, we've seen that the sort of like the tail end of these long-term supports is typically about a year. After about a year, folks are good. They don't need our help anymore or as intense support as an employment specialist or a rehab counselor. So at that point in time, that's when we start talking with the rest of the of the mental health team and saying, hey, we're ready to step this person down, or this person's ready to step down, in support services. They don't really need, my level of support. You as the case manager, you can help them navigate some of the issues or challenges that may come up at work. But they're always welcome to re-engage in services if something happens. Again, if something flares up, an employment specialist needs to go to work and advocate, we can re-enroll them, rapidly re-enroll them in the service. The employment specialist can jump in, or, like we were saying, after some time, somebody may say, hey, you know what, I'm ready for the next step. And I want to start looking for a new job, a better job, a higher paying job. We'll re-enroll them in services and go from there. So that is the idea and the philosophy behind the long-term support.
And that happens all the time, Chris. Even just a call from just a couple weeks ago, a long-term client where we supported him with the part-time job. He hadn't worked in a very long time, got the full-time job. He's got the wage that he wanted, the location he wanted. And eventually, like you said, we kind of faded off and, we successfully closed him from the program. He's been working successfully. But he called me and said, hey, I got a buddy, doing HVAC, and it sounds like a really good career. I think I want to take the next step. Can you guys help? Yes. So now he's working with the rehabilitation counselor and getting enrolled with Department of Rehab and going to be starting a training. And that's how it goes. Our number doesn't change. So you call us when you're ready to re-engage in the next step with your goal. So it happens all the time.
That's awesome, Don. I'm going to need that person's number for a testimonial.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of them. We got a lot of people we could use.
Awesome. All right. So the next practice principle.
Okay. So this is a big one, personalized benefits counseling. So, Initially, when I sit down with clients and their family members, I would say, or people even interested in services, they're on the fence. I'd say 75% of those folks come with fears and apprehension due to benefits. So this is huge, right? People are worried that something's going to be taken away from them. So we have a very comprehensive support system for benefits. Not only do, all of our staff have general training on benefits, counseling, and, SSI knowledge, SSDI knowledge, Medi-Cal, housing subsidies, but we have an expert benefits counselor on staff to, support in all the individual, everything is very individual with benefits. Every single person is different. So, it's a step-by-step process. The first initial meeting we have with a client, we talk about benefits. We want to engage them around, their fears and talk about what worries them, so that we can kind of mitigate those fears and help them understand their individual situation and have an honest conversation with them to help move them forward. It's an ongoing conversation, so we then engage with them with the benefits counselor. We certainly invite their payee, family members, any support system that will be helping with their understanding of benefits. So we invite them into the conversation with our benefits counselor, and we go through a comprehensive benefits profile where they get to really understand what is going to happen when we start work. How much can they earn? What is going to benefit them? Because we don't want to take anything away. We just want to help them gain more. We want them to keep all their healthcare benefits. We want them to keep their housing subsidies. So sometimes it's a fine line and a little bit of a negotiation. Now, when they're getting ready to start a job, we again meet with the benefits counselor. And oftentimes the employment specialist might have to go and do some advocacy with an employer, for example, if the client needs to stay within a very specific range. So we do a lot of advocacy with employers, and they're happy to negotiate hours or days off so that the client can stay within a certain range that works for them. And then, of course, it's ongoing, because once they start getting paid, we want to make sure the client is fully trained on how to report wages and the best system that works for them. And then ongoing, so that when they are up until discharge from our program successfully, when a client says, I no longer, need support anymore, I'm doing amazing, we say, okay, well, let's check in with the benefits counselor one more time, because we want to make sure, everything's on the up and up, you're fully trained, you understand, everything that is gonna, happen with your benefits, and then you have all of our contact information. So if you ever get a letter in the mail down the road, you feel comfortable calling us, and so we can help you understand the letter that you get from Social Security. So we just want to make sure people are making informed decisions about, their financial futures. And so all of us are really trained to support and wrap around clients. But our benefits counseling team counselor that we have on staff is an expert. So he really can get into the nitty gritty of everything benefits, and really get into the individual plan for the client to make sure they continue to receive all the subsidies and items that they need to sustain.
Yeah, benefits counseling is so important, such an important service. In fact, on the IPS Fidelity scale, under the services section, the benefits counseling is the very first item on that scale. So we want to make sure that folks are getting this information. People, when they've been polled themselves and asked, like, what is preventing you from, considering or going back to work, the number one answer time and again is, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my benefits, right? So there's a lot of misinformation out there. The benefits counseling that we ensure people receive is comprehensive and individualized based on their set of circumstances, because there's so many different programs and entitlement programs out there, SSI, SSDI, GA, housing subsidies, SNAP benefits, Medi-Cal, you name it, and everyone has a different combination, of that. And all of those benefits are means tested, meaning, your benefit is based on, your level of income. So as your level of income changes, your benefits are affected. Will you lose your benefits? Not necessarily. Will your benefits be affected by, additional income? Yes, they will, but we need you to sit down and speak with a benefits counselor. Again, like Don was saying, so that folks can make informed decisions for themselves about, which direction they want to go in. Because people may say like, oh, okay, well, instead of working full time, maybe I'll just work part time. That way I can keep my, income below the threshold, so I can maintain, my Medi-Cal health insurance, so I can maintain a connection, with my specialty mental health, treatment team. Or some folks will say like, what, I don't care about going to zero cash aid. I don't care about, losing my medical benefits because I'll get an employer benefit, and I'm making that decision to, to totally, become, self-sufficient and detach, from the system. So that's ultimately, where we want to get folks. But again, it's up to them. And there is, again, so much misinformation out there. People hear like, what happened to their friend? Like they lost their benefits because of X, Y, and Z, but their friend has a totally different situation as far as their benefits goes. So, all right. So just in the interest of time, we've got one more, the last practice principle that we'll go over. If you guys have any questions, please be sure to put those into the chat. We're gonna have to cut the presentation a little bit short, but I will share this PowerPoint deck, with everyone after the conference is over. So the last practice principle here is that the IPS Supported Employment Service is fully integrated with the larger clinical mental health treatment team. Employment specialists attend at least weekly treatment team meetings. This is an IPS. This is an anchor as far as team integration goes for Fidelity. The employment specialists work very, very closely with case managers, with psychiatrists, with other members of the multidisciplinary team, in order to help people achieve their employment goals. So there's lots of discussion amongst the team for finding, solutions around issues that, for the employment specialists specifically affect work and recovery. So we're talking about, medication side effects, right? If like there's a drowsing issue and that's, affecting somebody's performance work, we're talking about that at the treatment teams and seeing if the prescriber can make a med adjustment. If somebody's having, persistent, symptoms, the employment specialist can bring to say, hey, this is, the auditory or the visual, hallucinations is really impairing somebody's performance at work. The employment specialist can bring that up at the treatment team, and we can talk about, the specific interventions that, the therapist or the LPHA is working on with that person. We can help, reinforce, using, those interventions with the program participant themselves. If people are having just, cognitive difficulties or just other needs, just need help with social skills, with transportation, getting childcare, all these types of things that, somebody might need support with. We're going to bring that to the group because, on a multidisciplinary team, there are very specific roles and specialties for each of the team members. There's on an MDT team, there can be, a prescriber, there can be a primary care, physician, there can be a nurse, there can be a peer, a family advocate, a housing specialist, an SUD specialist, of course, an employment specialist or a education specialist. All these folks, make up the team. And what we want to make sure we're doing is that, each of these roles are respected And, each of these roles, we're not asking them to do things that are sort of outside, their scope of practice. And for the employment specialist, it's really important that, that their role, as again, with everyone's, their role is protected, and the employment specialist is able to focus just on, employment or education, and not get sucked into, housing challenges, or, maybe deeper, SUD issues, or whatever it may be, because, once that happens, there's drift, and the specialist is challenged, to focus on the employment piece. So maybe, Don, what I can do is jump ahead just to the role of the employment specialist. If you can talk about that specifically, for the folks, on the webinar who may not know entirely what it is, what is it that this employment specialist actually does. So I will jump to that. Oop. Here we go.
Yeah, and it's really great when you explain all the different partners on the team, and while everybody's role, is respected, everybody's looking through a different lens, and so and has a different purpose on the team. Now, the role of the employment specialist, like Chris was saying, they only provide employment services. So they hold a caseload of only 20 people, and that's because they do so much, because they carry out all the phases of employment service for each individual person. That's, the exploration phase, engagement, of course, doing applications and resume, to, marketing with employers, to job coaching on the job, and, the extensive retention and supports that happen to keep the person on the job. So that's a lot, and they are not in the office. You will not find employment specialists in the office very much, right? They're out in the community, and 65% of their work week is in the community, providing services to their clients. They're meeting clients at the coffee shop, at the library, maybe picking them up at their home to go out and do job developing. And of course, they're out there marketing to employers all the time, because they have a minimum of 6 face-to-face contacts they have to make every week. And that's very targeted and specific to each individual. So they are always running around out in the field, and they are a well-respected full member of the mental health treatment team that they attend each and every week. So that is, in a nutshell, an employment specialist.
Awesome. And I'm getting a lot of questions about the PowerPoint presentation. So this presentation, along with all the others throughout the conference, will be sent out to everyone who has registered after the conference is over. So yeah, there's a lot more information here. Unfortunately, we only had an hour to do this. We could talk about this all day, right, Don?
Right.
So there is one question here, and it says, how does IPS work for those who could and do become physically violent or threatening? So that's one of the things, that one of the questions that, sometimes gets asked, right? When employment specialists are actually out doing job development, and, maybe employment specialists say, hey, I work in specialty mental health. That's part of the stigma, right? That's out there around people who suffer with, mental health challenges. The stigma is that, people are violent and threatening, and I think the media and just our society really does a disservice, for folks who suffer with SMI. I mean, because that's it's sensationalized. It's sensationalized in the news. It's sensationalized in the movies and other media. But statistically speaking, people who suffer with mental health illness and challenges are more likely to be victims of violence than they are to perpetuate it. So that's just one of those myths that's out there. And as far as, the model and approach that we use here, the reason why we have these very small caseloads, 20 people, traditional rehab, employment, vocational specialists have, 100, if not hundreds. In this model, the maximum amount of folks at any given time, and this is a dynamic caseload because it's always changing, is 20 people. And the reason behind that is because we really want to get to know the person that we're working with. You know, we want to know their strengths, you know, their abilities, but we also want to be really aware of what their challenges and their barriers are as well. And based on those factors, we want to find the perfect job match for a person that's in line with their preferences, in line with their skills and their abilities. The last thing that we want to do is put somebody into an environment where we know, you know, that things could potentially, you know, not work out. You know, sometimes folks, again, it's an iterative process. Sometimes folks need to go through the experience to figure that out for themselves. You know, one of our sort of like, you know, one of the best practices is, you know, we don't ever want to tell anybody what they can't do. We want to support people with things that they can do. And even if that means, you know, walking alongside them in their own journey and trying on different hats and trying on different things, you know, we can just walk alongside and just bring up, you know, the potential concerns and say, hey, I know you struggle with this, and there's you know, maybe you don't like interacting with people so much, but this job really requires, you know, a high level of interaction with the public. And sometimes, you know, the public isn't so nice. So thinking about what the person's challenges are, knowing them, we can upstream plan for that, right? So we can do, you know, job coaching. We can do scenarios around, okay, so if you've got, you know, an agitated customer and they're in your face and they're saying this, that, and the other, you know, how are you going to, you know, respond to that? Because we know that this is an aspect of the job. So very much being proactive as opposed to reactive, knowing our participants, you know, these are all things that we want to take into consideration.
And that's a really important role of the integrated team, right? Because the LPHA case manager role really helps and supports with mental health symptoms. And, you know, oftentimes these clinicians have had long-term relationships with these clients. They've seen them at their best and they've seen their clients at their worst, and they know their triggers and they've seen the history. And so the employment specialists and rehab counselor are working right alongside of these clinicians to really get an understanding of where the client's at and what some of their needs and challenges will be on the job. So we work well as a team. And this is something, a perfect example of something that would come up at a team meeting, and we would discuss best supports and who would handle what when. So that's a great question. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. So I think at this point, we will transition everybody into the lunch break. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to sit with us here and go over IPS 101. Again, I will send out this PowerPoint deck, but just this one last point I want to drive home. And, you know, Joe talked about it. Gary talked about it. This really is, as far as, you know, vocational services goes, is a paradigm shift. You know, this is the opposite of the stepwise approach to supported employment, where we make people, you know, jump through a bunch of hoops before actually getting a job. We immediately engage, you know, in getting folks work, and we let the work be the experience, right? People have brought up kind of like, well, how do we do these readiness assessments and skill build people? This is on the job training. You know, that's how we look at it. You know, folks are going to learn through experience, much like, you know, a lot of us here, you know, have done over our professional careers. You know, we didn't necessarily go to a resume writing workshop. Like we just, you know, we wrote a resume. We didn't learn, you know, how to use, you know, office, computers and things like that until we got, you know, on the job. So that's what we're about. Yeah, so it is a paradigm shift, and it's something that, you know, it's a service that is provided concurrently with all the other services, right? So it's not, hey, we got to get somebody housed first before we work on employment, or we got to get somebody clean and sober before we work on employment. Employment is the intervention in of itself. Like Don was saying earlier, employment is what's going to get actually in the way of somebody who's, you know, who's using substances. And it's like, hey, I can't use because I got no more free time. I got to go to work. Right. Or, you know, or, hey, I'm working on finding, you know, permanent stable housing while I'm working. You know, there's tons of stories, here in the Bay Area, in California in general, the cost of living is so high. We've had folks who are camped out and living in Central Park, but going to work at Tesla, during the day. And because at Tesla, they got a gym membership, they're able to go to the gym. They don't even work out, but they go straight there and use the facilities, get all cleaned up, take a shower, and off to work. So where there's a will, there's a way.